we saw the name Meteora, we liked it because it was just epic and cinematic, powerful and dynamic, and that's what we wanted our album to sound like.
Meteora is actually a series of rock formations in Greece, and on top of these rocks, some monasteries were built centuries and centuries ago. And when you look at the pictures, they're quite unbelievable in that you have no idea how they actually got these structures built on top of these rocks and how anyone ever got up there. But the pictures were just breathtaking and epic, and they inspired us to try to create sonically what we were seeing visually.
It's a really ambitious title for a record, but I think that we were really ambitious about making this record. We really wanted to put a lot of time and effort into it to make it a perfect Linkin Park record. I think that that's also carried through in the art of the album, and also will also always be there through the visual aspect of the band. We want what you see to seem like something that's larger than life and fantastical. I think that the parallel between our music and our artwork has always been there, even with Hybrid Theory. The idea of bringing heavy elements and softer elements of music together was represented through the visual art of the album with the Soldier and the Dragonfly Wings. The really hard, jaded looks with the really soft, frail touches is something that we like to do. We're even going further with this one.
One of the ways that we wanted to tie everything together was through the idea of a work in progress. People don't usually get to see how an album is made or how the whole thing that they're holding is put together. They just get the CD and it's like it fell out of the sky. They listen to it and there it is. So that's it. That's all there is to it. In our case, we wanted to show people all the stuff that goes into that, because I think that stuff is just as interesting and sometimes maybe even more interesting than the actual finished product.
The idea really wasn't about representing what the music is, but kind of representing what the process is. And so we focused our attention toward the process and rather than what the music is, because I think our music will speak for itself. And now we want to focus on a different aspect of what we're doing.
Hey Mike, whose concept was this? Whose concept was this? It was his concept.
Frank and Joe and I are usually the starting point for most of our art projects. Joe being our DJ and Frank being our art director.
Mike and I actually met at art school, and that's how we met, and that's kind of why we're here doing the artwork.
Joe and I were doing that before we were in the band together. We've been doing music and art forever.
That's a big part of where Mike and I come from. We're artists, visual artists, we're painters. When we do our music, it's not just music we're putting out there, we're putting out images also.
They really care about the artwork a lot. They cared on the first record, and they care more now, and I just think it worked for them. A lot of bands don't really care, a lot of labels don't care, but these guys happen to really respect what all of us do, what they do, and they want to, have some cool stuff.
So whenever we have something come up like this, we always really want to be part of it because it's a lot of fun for us. We get to do something that we like doing.
We have to do stuff like this to justify us going to art school. Art school is expensive.
We were working on the new album and we're working on Reanimation at the same time. We knew we were going to really have to get started with the artwork because we were kind of pushing everything at really fast speeds, trying to get everything together really quickly.
Doing it this way is new, And it's cool because we've been in the studio and touring for the past couple of years, so it's cool to actually create an excuse to get out of that situation and create artwork.
We wanted to get them out as soon as possible. So that being the case, we knew that we needed to get a head start on the art. And the best way to do that in our minds was to do kind of a production piece, kind of something big that Frank, our art director, could kind of take and manipulate.
What's happening today here isn't necessarily going to be what ends up being the album cover or anything in specific, but I'll just basically try to make sense out of everything and maybe collage some things together. This is like the first step in an evolution of the process.
I think basically what we're looking for is just to capture little photos and document it somehow.
You know, we'll have to take a look at it, and I think James is kind of in the process of shooting snippets of things. You know, I'd like to get lots of little details of things. We'll also shoot the whole thing as a whole, get some great shots of that, and just kind of see how it makes sense. You know, this stuff might find its way in the back of lyrics or as an ad. This stuff will have a lot of uses.
Start off, Boris, just give me your name.
Boris.
We were looking through some books to see who we wanted to work with, and Delta's portfolio came across, you know, in the mail.
My graffiti name's Delta. I got an email like, you feel like doing this, and yeah, I thought it was cool.
We've been big fans of his for years, so it's cool to be able to finally work with him.
There was a photo of him just kind of like halfway finished with a piece that we thought this is exactly what we want to do. Something that really embodied where we're at, whether it's music or art or whatever.
Boris is not just a graffiti guy. He's a fine artist. You can see in all of his work that he takes great care in putting together a sketch and great care in turning that sketch into something that goes on a wall.
I don't really feel like being a graffiti artist. I mean, that's my background, like graffiti, and I incorporated a lot of other different stuff in it. I studied product design, university, like industrial design engineering. And while in university, at one point I thought, hey, wait, maybe I can design letters as being objects, like stuff you can hold. And then, yeah, I started experimenting with that.
With a satellite that's up on the 2-3 panels of our piece that we worked on, he originally did as a pencil sketch on graph paper, and then he darkened it and copied it to acetate and projected it on a wall, and then went in there with this certain kind of spray paint he likes to use. And that's when you can really see that he came up through the ranks of being a graffiti artist. I mean, his control with a spray can is just unbelievable. It's almost like he had a marker and he just made a line. It's that straight and it's that clean, and there's no like fuzzy edges or anything. He just gets up there and uses it like an extension of his own hand.
Well, I knew it was going to be like 4 panels. I thought they'd be a lot smaller, but it's nice that they're big actually. And I brought a big pack of sketches with me, and we discussed like, all right, well, what shall we do? And Frank, the art director, had some ideas like, yeah, maybe this and that.
I always kind of have some idea, you know, I cut stencils and bring some Xeroxes and bring some stuff, but I don't know exactly how it's going to end up. Especially when you're working with 3 other artists, you're going to be going over top of somebody's stuff and, you know, working with someone's stuff. It's kind of a process-oriented thing.
A little bit of pre-planning, but mostly it's just free form. We knew we wanted to put Boris's city, almost this cubist cityscape thing, as the main element that ties all 4 panels together, and then everybody else's work will kind of just live around that.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, the stuff I do tends to come out kind of evil. I guess I got some evilness in me. My stuff is more like a little more sinister than what Mike does, and Delta's got that, you know, the whole dimensional thing going on, which no one can really compete with. And Frank, his like collage stuff, man, is just gritty and raw, and it's like, it's got a lot of vibe to it.
We used everything from spray paint to house paints, acrylics, Xeroxes, wheat paste on the Xeroxes, pretty much everything.
At the point when we did the art day, the music was close, but the lyrics weren't there yet. They kind of were progressing together. We had an idea of what the music was going to sound like. We didn't really have an idea of what the lyrics were going to be like. So as you can see on the piece, you've got like scribbled lyrics and words like cuidado and all these things that Chester was writing. When you look at those little lyrics and the words that are there, you'll notice that most of them aren't on the album anymore when you listen to it. And I think that's really represents what we were doing.
Well, I think the big mystery behind music is like where it comes from within a person. It's no mystery how music gets made and how music is recorded. Everybody knows how that's done. Everybody knows there's a process to that. What's always the eternal mystery is how do they do it? How do you come up with these kinds of sounds? How did you think about creating this type of art for a package? That's where the mystery will always be, because you can't give that away. There's no like blueprint to creativity or talent.
It's cool how all these different styles can get together, you know, and to become one thing. That's kind of like what we do with our music.
we'll start with a song and start with a sampled beat and we add guitar on it. You get all that stuff together and say you do vocals last. That vocal may just require that you need to change the samples and guitar, which is the thing that you started out with. But you got to be flexible and willing to throw half the song away if you're gonna make it good.
You know, the original idea may not sound like what it turns out to be, you know. And that's kind of the idea with this.
I think we do kind of stay out of each other's way at certain points, you know. If somebody's kind of on a roll, whether it's music or it's what we're doing here today, and you know to let that person have some space until they get that idea done. You see the momentum, and they start to really have something, and you can just let them do it. We'll see some of that happen in the studio too. We'll see that soon.
For me, this is kind of like a first-time thing, working like this with layers of different styles and techniques. Really nice. Lots of times I worked with other graffiti artists, basically with spray paint, and then it's a totally different result. It's all really kind of nice the way it like gradually goes from one theme and the other.
I want to show how the music comes out. I want to show how the artwork is made, and those little, like that little soldier that everybody saw from the first album. They saw the soldier, but they didn't see, you know, us looking through all these books, trying to figure out how we wanted to present ourselves for the first time ever in the world, and sketching the little soldiers and turning it into a stencil and spray painting it on a wall and scanning that in the computer and manipulating it. You know, there's a lot of work that always goes into all these things, and I think it's a really cool thing. As different parts of the whole thing evolve, inevitably you've got to change some of the stuff you did earlier.
You never regret covering up something because, you know, it adds to the whole. You know, it's there. It's just you just can't see it right now.
We're just trying to kind of make it a little more consistent between the 4 panels. As soon as we put black fields on the first panel, we knew we had to start adding black on 2, 3, and 4 as well.
I don't know. I think it's still kind of evolving too. I really like everything. I think it came together pretty nice.
We feel like we're just getting started. You know, I mean, I know people have put a lot of pressure on the position we're in with the album, but we're not, you know, we're young guys and we want to do a lot of different things. So work in progress was kind of the theme that came out of it. That's basically the starting point of this whole piece. It's not about like the finished thing, it's about how it gets there. As much as we can do that with this album, show that evolution, we will.
I guess when the balance is right, when it's like well balanced, like weight-wise, like color, that ties it together. I think, you know, like all these different shapes and forms, the color ties it together more or less. We could go on for a long time. You know, it's hard to say like, right, it's finished now, don't do anything more.
We could keep working on this thing for another 3 days probably. But I think once it gets to a point where, you know, either we have to stop because of time or, you know, you kind of just get to a point where it's like it feels right and you can just stop.
I think the reason that it still was a work in progress, even though we were finished painting on it, at that point the piece was, we weren't going to paint on it anymore for the purposes of this album, but then we take all the photos and things that we captured and then those get worked on in the computer and get type added on them and get put in an album, and then it evokes some kind of emotion or idea in the person that looks at it, and then it's done. When it gets into the kid who buys the CD, that's when it's finished.
When referring to this day, I call it the Meteora Day, because when they were doing these paintings, that to me was Meteora. Kind of like how Linkin Park might have meant one thing when we chose the name, but ultimately came to describe the music that we make. Meteora might be a rock formation in Greece, but for our intents and purposes, Meteora is the album we made. And so when I was watching all this go on, in my head that was Meteora.
We wanted people to kind of see how you can take something that doesn't really mean anything, like 4 giant pieces of white wall, basically, and you can turn it into something that is a complete thought, and you can have multiple people working on it to complete one visual piece of art. And It kind of takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a little bit of vision, but really, nobody walks in premeditated with the idea of what it's going to look like at the end. And when you see it finally in its final product, you kind of look at it and it reveals itself.
The art is the making of the art, and it's somewhat reflexive, and then it's looking back and commenting on itself.
Just bringing all these different heads together, it kind of just comes together and makes this beautiful thing that the outcome is more than the sum of its parts.
We chose the image of Boris for the cover of the album because of that quiet power of it.
And I think it really represents the album sonically. From what I've seen in the footage of the art, it's looking like it's really going in the right direction, and it's really paralleling our music, and it's representing what our music looks like.
Something can look really beautiful even before it's finished, and while you're doing it, capturing that moment where the artist is into the project, it can be artistic at the same time.